I'm walking into a new building on my first day at a brand new job. But I didn't feel like I belonged there at all. When I was a kid, I never was great at telling stories. I was never good at explaining stories. I mumbled a lot, I stuttered a bit, and I could never put my thoughts in order enough to tell a compelling story that people wanted to listen to. So I joined theater as a kid thinking maybe that'll help me tell better stories. Maybe I can be up on stage and help act out a story better. But I immediately just wanted to be backstage. I liked wearing all black. I liked moving things when no one could see me. I liked making things happen without being on stage. I didn't learn how to tell a better story, but I learned that I liked doing things behind the scenes. And that more or less directly led me to this new job. I was a back-end engineer at a company with the best storytellers in the world. This was my first day at Disney Animation Studios. The studio that made pretty much all of my favorite childhood films. These people were storytellers to their core. They were talented and could tell a story about anything at any time, and I was here not only to work, but to learn how they told those stories. I wanted to make sure that I never left until I figured out exactly the talent that they had that would help me tell a better story. I go to my computer on that first day, I log in, and there's already a meeting on my calendar. The meeting says, Big Hero 6. I don't know what that means. The only thing I knew was Big Hero 6 was the film we were working on at the time. So I go to my manager and I ask, I said, hey, what's this Big Hero 6 thing? He told me, I want you to go watch the film. I don't know how to tell you this, but it's not out yet. I think we're still working on it. He told me, no, there's a theater in the lobby. Go watch the film and see how it's progressing. I 100% thought this was a trick. No way was my first meeting on my first day at my brand new job going to be sit in the theater for 2 hours and watch a cartoon. But he was serious. So I went. Of course I did. I sit down, the lights go out, and I watch the film. And I am so surprised at just how terrible that movie was that I watched. There was no way we were going to ship that to a movie theater in 6 months. At the end of the film, the lights come up, and they handed me a piece of paper, and they said, this is for your notes. I had no idea what that meant. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't know what I was supposed to write down. I didn't know how to give them any sort of constructive criticism to tell them to make the movie better besides start over from scratch. Because I did not know how it could get from what I saw to something that would be great in a theater. So I threw away the piece of paper and just forgot about it. 6 months later, the movie came out. And it was incredible. I was blown away by the graphics and the drawings, everything in it was amazing. 6 months after that, it won the Best Feature Animated Film, and I got to hold the Oscar for the Best Linux System Administration in an Animated Feature Film. It's not actually what the title was, but that was my title, and that's what I thought that award was for. That's how I connected to the film, because that's what I did. And somehow this thing that we created became great, and I didn't know how. I still thought that these storytellers were magicians that could fix anything, and they could conjure up a good story out of anything they wanted. A little while later, I got to have lunch with Ed Catmull, who is the president of Pixar Animation Studios and Disney Animation Studios. I was so excited to meet him because he is a pioneer in animation and a really smart guy. I asked him what was the biggest difference for him when he started Pixar and what Pixar does, and Disney Animation when he came and took over Disney Animation. He told me Pixar had the Brain Trust, and the Brain Trust was a group of experienced people who could tell stories, but more importantly, pick apart stories to find the elements that were good and give constructive criticism to make them better. And that group of people could go to any story at any time and give feedback, whether it was their film or not, whether they liked the story or the characters or not. They could find what pieces of it were good and bad and give that criticism to make it better. He said at Disney, they had something on their storyboards that Pixar never had. They had this ramp of when the story started and when it needed to be finished, when the movie had to ship. And somewhere in the middle, there was this moment of the bang. And the bang was when the story would have to be thrown away. They had a moment in time that they planned for, that they knew the story would be terrible. All this work they had to do up to that point, and then to start over from that moment. And they would throw it away, take everything they learned, and then finish the story in film. He said Pixar would do the same thing, but they would struggle with that moment. They never expected it to come, and they always thought they were failing when the story wasn't any good. He said that was the biggest differences between Pixar and Disney in creative cultures with how they approach telling these stories. And that gave me some insight that it wasn't about the raw talent, even though these people were very talented. It was more about the process and getting the feedback and how they could improve the story over time. This isn't, hey, I had this great idea and now it's a film. These films take years, and the story doesn't finish at the beginning and then they animate it. The story's evolving throughout the entire process, and they're making it better over and over and over again every time they retell part of the story or the entire story. And that process is what makes the story actually good. A little while later, I got another surprise meeting. This one said, Ralph Breaks the Internet story. I didn't know what that meant, but again, I went to my boss and I said, hey, what's this about? And he said the story department for Ralph Breaks the Internet wanted my help. I said they should probably go somewhere else because I'm not a storyteller. I can't help them with that story. But of course I went. I was so excited to go and see what they wanted to talk about. I walk into the room and there's the director and the writers and the producers, and they're all sitting around this big table, and they say, go have a seat. Sit down. And they say, we want you to tell us about computer viruses. Okay, I know a little about that. I know a little about malware. I know a little about how the internet works. They said, yes, perfect. Please go ahead. And for the next 3 hours, I had the best meeting of my life. I will never have another meeting more fun than that. Telling these super creative and awesome people about what computers do when they're breaking, how things break, and how that can be integrated into a story with cartoon characters running in the internet. It was such an awesome moment that showed me even more that the storytelling process was what's important. It wasn't the original idea. All of them were willing to throw out everything they had thought was right and everything they thought they needed in the story, and they could pull out elements and then figure out how it fit into telling a better story for the film. When I finally left Disney, I had realized that these people are incredibly talented, but those stories are all about that process and all about that feedback. And being able to craft a story and get feedback on it is what was really important about telling stories. And I have a couple tips to help you tell better stories with your life experience, with the way you tell these stories on stage and in meetings and one-on-one with people, so that you can be a better storyteller by applying some of this process and feedback mechanisms. So let's start with just what are some elements that tell a better story? What do you need as part of the story to make it better? Because the content does matter and how you tell it matters, but I'm not going to focus on being on stage and having stage presence. Let's just focus on what you're talking about in your story. And the number one thing, if you can add one thing to your story, is more important than anything else, it's conflict. Have conflict in your story. Have something in your story that you can't get over without making a decision. Something that you expected not to happen and does happen. And the way I add that in most of my stories is using one word. It's the word but. Add the word but to a sentence, and it's a conflicting word. It's something that you have to get over. You have to say, I expected this, but this happened. And now I changed what I have to do. I had to make different decisions because that conflict is in my way. You can use other words like however and things like that, but is such a powerful word that you can stick in the middle of a sentence to say, this is different. Something has changed. And that conflict is where people pay attention. and they lean into it. If I asked how your vacation was, and you said we went here, and we went here, and we went here, you told me your itinerary. That wasn't at all a story. If you said, I went there expecting to have a great time at the beach, but I enjoyed the mountains instead. And now I'm changed because I have different perspective on what that place is like. And that leads us to the exact second thing that you want in your story. You want a moment of change. This but is driving you to be a different person. It's driving you to make a different decision than you expected to make. So, find that moment when you changed in your life. It doesn't have to be a big moment. It doesn't have to be flying to the moon. It doesn't have to be having a kid. It can be a daily occurrence that you didn't expect, that now you feel different about something. Now you might like spaghetti and you never did before. It doesn't matter. It can be daily things, but you had a moment in time when you changed and you realized, I'm a different person, or I behave differently because this thing happened. That moment of change is usually a very small moment. It's usually like a 5-second moment. It's not a big thing that happens on and on for years at a time. Some things take time to get there, but there's a deciding moment when you say, hey, now I'm different. I have all this background that led me to this moment of now I'm changing. I love using the example of the movie Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park is a movie that everyone says is about dinosaurs. The movie Jurassic Park is mostly about Alan, the main character who's an archaeologist. He starts the movie digging up dinosaur bones, doing what he loves. That is his job and he loves it. The thing he doesn't love? Kids. Kids get in the way. They're noisy, they're messy. He kind of teases one at the beginning of the movie saying he doesn't understand why his girlfriend or his coworker would want to have a kid. Fast forward a little bit, he sees dinosaurs in real life. He has this conflict of now his job is changing and he has to also survive some dinosaurs. That's a big conflict. That's something that definitely happens. But the moment in change for Alan is after he rescues some kids from some dinosaurs, he's up in a tree about ready to go to sleep. And the kids say, what if they come at night? He says, don't worry, I'm going to stay up all night. They're not coming for you. I'm going to protect you from the dinosaurs. He sits down on that raptor claw and he pulls it out and he looks at it and he's like, I don't need this anymore. And he throws it out of the tree. He doesn't need the thing that he'd been clinging to. The life that he thought was so important isn't actually important anymore. Dinosaurs are real and he loves these kids and he's going to protect them. And that movie ends with him flying in a helicopter with both kids at his side, smiling because his life has changed and he is a different person because of that encounter. The conflict is definitely dinosaurs. The change that he went through was realizing he loved those kids, and he loved kids in general. Every sequel, he has this little conflict with it still, but he still loves kids. The last thing you need in a story is stakes. You need a reason that that change is important. If you tell me that you love spaghetti now, why do I care? Okay, that's great that you've changed and you've now discovered that spaghetti is your favorite meal. But it doesn't affect me. There's no reason that I care or I'm glad for you to love spaghetti. But if there's a moment or there's a reason that you loving spaghetti is important, if it was your grandfather's favorite meal, if you came from Italy and it used to be how your grandma made it, if it reminds you of your past and now you have a connection to your family, that's some stakes. That's a reason that I actually care that you like this meal now. I wouldn't have cared otherwise. But there's reasons that it's important to you, and that is good. And that is something that you have discovered that you're a different person, and being a spaghetti lover is good. In the story that I told, I wanted to be a storyteller. I wanted to be able to tell stories, but I wasn't good at it. I'm still not great at it. I practice and I go through this process of figuring out stories to make them better, but I know there's moments and times when they're not good, and I get that feedback to make them better. So if you have those three elements, if you have conflict, if you have a moment of change and you have stakes in the reason that that change is important, you have the elements for a great story. So how do you craft that story into something you can tell? Because you can't just start with, hey, I'm different. Hey, but this is something. The way you start is you find the moment you changed and you go back in time to the closest moment where you felt different, where you felt most anti or against the thing that you changed for. Find that moment in time and start there. And say, hey, this is how I felt. This is why I felt this way. This is what was going on. This is why it was important to me. Give me those stakes. Give me the reason that I actually care for this. And then give me that conflict. And give me the thing that has to change in your life, the new decision you have to make to become a better person at the outside, on the other side of this change. And people are really good at connecting these dots. These pattern matching is something that people are really ingrained to do. And even though I may or may not like spaghetti, the fact that you care and the fact that it connected you with your grandparents or whatever will help me remember, oh yeah, there was something that I'm connected with my grandparents about. There's something that I'm connected with my family about. And I do care about that. And seeing the change in time with people is what humans are constantly asking ourselves. Who am I? How am I different? Have I improved? Those are just constant questions that we're always asking ourselves, and we want to be better at, and we want to see how things get better in our lives and how we make better decisions. So highlighting your own changes, highlighting how you've become a different person through those small moments of time, through the small 5-second decisions that you've made that made you a different person. Those are things that we can connect with and figure out, I'm similar, I care, I understand why this is important to you. Bringing those things out in the story is what's really important. Now, as you find those elements and you craft that story, the most important thing is getting that feedback, is getting that outside feedback. That process of continually improving the story is sometimes the hardest part. But you need to find your own story trust of people that you trust that you can tell a story, and they're going to tell you exactly how they feel about it. They're going to tell you the moments that don't make sense. They're going to tell you the things that they really enjoyed or the things they didn't understand. And you can work on those pieces. Not everyone's right. Not everything is good feedback, but taking that criticism and figuring out what you're trying to tell, what story you're trying to tell, what moment of change and what conflict you're trying to focus on, and get rid of the other stuff. Even if it was a big event, even if there was a lot going on, focus on the things that lead up to that decision that you changed and how that impacted you, and kind of get away from the other stuff. But you do need to find people that you can talk to and not just do it in a mirror, not just record yourself and listen back to it, because your thought process is going to be different than when you tell it to someone, I guarantee you. So find a coworker or family or a friend or someone that you can ask them, hey, can I run this by you? Can I tell you a story about something? Try to make them short. You don't have to tell them the entire story, but get moments that are important to you or things you're trying to figure out. When movies are trying to improve the story, they don't start from the beginning and then go an hour and a half, 2 hours to the end. They find little segments of the story that they want to improve on, and they work on that just for a little bit. And they say, hey, this doesn't connect over here, or these things aren't tied together. How do we improve that piece of it? And they tell smaller stories inside of scenes that they can focus on and say, how is this important? Where does it fit? And what's going on with the rest of the characters and the story to make this better? And you can do the same thing in practicing short stories with friends and with family. Taking those core elements of a story and that process of improving it continually will give you better confidence whenever you tell the story. Because this isn't the first time you've tried saying it in public. This isn't the first time you've got negative feedback about it. And you know that the next time you tell it, it'll be a little better. We don't ship code to production the first time we write it. We have tests and we have other mechanisms in place to make sure that that code does what we expect it to do, that it does the thing that we want it to when it ships. And we probably put it in different environments first. And we've run that code dozens of times at least to develop it, to troubleshoot it, to debug it, to add some of that stuff that makes sure that this thing that we're shipping to production is doing the thing we expect. And when you're running code, you're continually improving it over time. And even if it ships in production, you might find some optimizations. You might find some new ways of doing it or telling it that says, hey, this code can be improved. Stories are the same way. Even if your life decision, even if the thing you're trying to talk about is the same, you can still make improvements over time. And that's great because you can adapt those stories to different situations to tell different lessons. Use that to your advantage to constantly remember, hey, I have these stories. I have some of these things, these moments of change in my life that I can remember and I can tell people, and they can relate it to themselves in the situation. Focus on how you changed as a person, practice those stories to other people, and improve them over time. And they'll slowly get better and better and better. And the next thing you know, you have an amazing story that you can tell from start to end exactly as you want to. But there's also a saying that people don't read the book you write. People don't hear the story you tell. They're going to apply it to their own situation, in their own context, with their own background and framing. So you can be okay with not getting every point across, with not making sure that everything was heard exactly as you wanted to say it, because they're not hearing it that way anyway. So make sure you tell the story true to yourself and let the people that hear it adapt it for their own situation and learn their own lesson out of it. I'm Justin Garrison, and I believe that storytelling is so powerful in everything that we do. So keep telling your story about your life and improving those stories so that other people can learn from you as well. Thanks for watching.